Welcome back. This is Will at Work. I'm Kevin. Today we have the Unisonic Olympian 2600. This is a late edition Pong system, although it does look like this could be a big cartridge port. It is not. Unisonic did dabble in the programmable ROM era of cartridges. I believe their Unisonic 2711 was the first one, which was this odd cartridge system that allowed you to play card games with a controller very similar to this controller here, thinner, and the two buttons were just yes and no, and there was no stick. The processor that generated these card games in that system, the 2711, was incredibly limited. It was basically only going to do that. I think maybe it was able to do something like memory or some other thing, but it was really poor and may have never reached commercial release. There seems to be, according to people online, only about 25 of them known to exist, and they go up on auction rarely. Now, there was also a sort of limited release of it in Japan, and that was called Casino Card Games. Nice generic name there. And I don't know, I've never seen one of those, but apparently that also exists. It's very similar to Nichibutsu, which also came out with a board game slash card game system, extremely rare, called the My Vision. And that is also, I don't know if it was ever released commercially. The reason I say that is because if you only have 25 units in the wild, that seems like more or less a sort of prototype run where you might send the units out to advertisers or, you know, people that were testing the equipment, company executives that wanted to look at it, show it in meetings and boardrooms, etc., etc. You know, going to a manufacturer, even today, and saying like you want a limited number of something that's custom game console, etc., usually they're going to be like, we have a minimum order that we're going to make this. You have to make the molds and all of this sort of stuff to get it, you know, circuit boards and all this kind of thing. So, you know, they would wire these things together and put them, you know, into these molds with the expectation that they were going to make more. But that first run, you know, was probably very limited, and in which case that wasn't going to a store. There's no store out there that was going to be like, you know, yeah, we only need 25 of them. I mean, imagine Sears saying, hey, we want an order of those 27. I mean, there was like 1,000 Sears stores. Like, what, are you only going to put one in like 25 stores? No, of course not. I mean, your general numbers, you know, were probably between 10,000 and 50,000 when you were making a commercially released system, more than likely. Now, there are a few systems out there that were mail order only kind of things, right? The Bally Astrocade was essentially, I believe, sort of mail order, although way more than 25 of those exist. And we looked at like some small vendor type things that also, you know, produced a limited quantity of them. Sort of like the, oh, what was that thing called? That one handheld with the light behind it. Can't remember it. But anyway, that does happen. But Unisonic, you know, they sold these things en masse to different electronics companies. And so it seems unlikely that the 2711 was more than the I would say the prototype stage. Although typically prototypes tend to be less than, say, 10, right? But still, I don't think a commercial release of 25 units is normal. It seems to me like 2711 is actually some sort of a prototype. Or, there's always things in the history of gaming. Like, somebody could have made a manufacturing run and then just suddenly said, shut it down, Or possibly they made, 10,000 of them and they didn't get any orders and they sat in a warehouse somewhere. And therein lies the whole, like, one day somebody finds them all in a warehouse, quote unquote, and starts selling them online. Who knows? But I will say that the Olympian 2711 is one of the rarest consoles. The Nichibutsu My Vision, also extremely rare. There is one person, I believe, selling one on eBay for an insane price. But otherwise, that one basically never comes up on auction that I've seen. So those are a couple of really rare ones. And they came out around the same time as the Intellivision, Atari 2600. And so those sorts of limited systems sort of went the way of the warrior, and the cartridge ROMs sort of took over. Now, I think Unisonic may have had possibly, I'm not sure, they may have had one of either the Gemini systems, or they had a 1292 advanced programmable system, which was basically the microprocessor on the cartridge, and that you would insert into basically the dumb unit and play games on it. I'm not quite sure about that, but possibly. And that would be sort of like the in-between this unit here, which was their last Pong system, and then the 2711. Beyond the 2711, I'm not sure. It gets a little bit interesting when you look at where the development of these systems was going. At least interesting to me, because you had these sort of weaker cartridge-based systems. I mean, even the Atari 2600 and, for its part, the Intellivision were fairly weak. And it took a lot to develop any kind of game on these systems. And so there was this, transition going on, and a lot of people were looking at different ways of doing things. Cassette Vision had processors on chip, but they also had customized ROMs that way. We had various machines that were underperformant, let's say, even though the 2600 itself was underperformant in a lot of ways. There were things that were a lot worse. And I would say when we started to get to a point where games became more well thought in the game systems in terms of the architecture, we were probably looking somewhere around, like, well, I mean, certainly things like the 2600 and up, but I think, like, people started to realize where the shortcomings were. And, it was probably somewhere around the Nintendo NES, of course, right, the Famicom, and ColecoVision, Sega SG-1000. They started to look less at, like, having the whole processor on one chip kind of thing, and sort of saying, like, we need a display processor that's capable of, delivering a lot of these graphical effects that developers need in order to make the games, rather than the developers sitting down and trying to figure out ways to make a game with the technology at hand that wasn't really designed to do the things they wanted to do. Anyway, sorry for the long story there, but I just wanted to fill in a little blanks on the fact that Unisonic has some video gaming history in it. And it's one of those companies that nobody hears about today, etc., but they were in the very early days making a cartridge-based system. But this is not it. This is the Unisonic Olympian 2600. We had looked at a Unisonic in the past, a different Pong system that was weaker. I think these are removable. Yeah. They're rather large. They do have analog four-way control. Doesn't recenter itself. Right, we have a volume on the unit itself, which is welcome because most of these do not have a volume control. We have 10 games here, including 2 shooting games. I don't have the gun. Let's look at the gun port. It's either, looks like it's a single, if that's the gun port, that might be the adapter port actually. Where's the gun port? Oh. That has to be the power adapter port. That looks like a power adapter port. So where on earth does the gun plug into? Does it plug into one of the controllers? No, not that one. No. There's a mystery here. Tell me, Unisonic, where does the gun plug in? I don't think that comes off. I mean, maybe when you're opening it does. Honestly, I don't see any way for a gun to plug into this unit. It is surprising me. I'm potentially just missing it. Well, it's possible then this is one of those weird units where you do the shooting game with the analog controller. You move like an aimer around. We've seen that, I think, once, and it looks like this is a possibility here too. So we have 10 total games. It's all the usual ones till you get a little bit further towards the end. We have a big reset button here, power button, handicap, and speed inhibit, which is a different name of probably just the ball going faster or slower is my guess. Handicap probably has to do with paddle size. We do have serve and reset on the controllers. It took this long. It took to the end of Pong systems in general for somebody to think, let's put both on the controller. Amazing. Amazing it took that long. But hey, Unisonic got it right. I don't know if this works. We're going to wire it up to the TV side right now. We'll take a look at it, see what we get. Here we go. We are looking at the Unisonic Olympian 2600. It's a very bright blue screen. Turn the brightness down, if I could, in order to look at it. This is in the tennis game. Left player control. Let's hit reset. It does not seem to be functioning. Right player control is functioning and moves into dimensions. Okay. Right or left team control. Well, the serve button works. Oh, I see. Yeah, my player's there. He's just so white, I can't see him. So that's at least good. He has 4 dimensions of movement as well. Okay, at least the controller works. Well, that's good. Now let's see. Let's look at hockey. So this says that the one thing follows the movement of the other. A little bit more advanced. Same with the other side. Reset. So both players have to hit the serve button at the same time before it starts. Squash, practice, soccer, baskets, just basketball, hoops, single player basketball, grid ball, and shoot. And shoot does look like it's a aimer type of thing. And shooting, which should be the 2-player mode. So it looks like some version of the standard AY3 8500. I mean, generation. This seems to have more games on it than the standard one since it has basketball, so it's probably a later edition. It's probably the General Instruments chip. There were other chips, I mean, Texas Instruments and stuff, but for the most part, we usually do see the General Instruments one. And it does have the shooting games without the light gun. It's really kind of a weird choice. For the most part, it works. The picture's fairly stable. There's a little bit of RF cleanup that could probably be done. It's very bright, so my guess is, you could probably tune down the brightness on an old TV and it would look okay. There may be inside the unit itself as well, there may be a way to turn down some of that brightness sometimes. But those pots are usually really old. Don't like to mess with them. Anyway, Unisonic Olympian 2600. It works. It's a keeper. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.